Okay, my name is Howard Eber. I'm an alcoholic. I want to welcome everyone to our Monday night deep dive. Uh, Boy, it seems that this month has just flown by, just flown by. By the same token, it seems like just yesterday that David was doing the introductions to our Sunday night meeting. Time has certainly flown by, it really has. And I'm proud to announce that next week we have been honored with Elizabeth is taking over as the facilitator. She's here somewhere this evening. But David, it's been a great month, and I know we'll finish big. So I turn it over to you, David.
Thank you, Howard Eber. How good it is to be here, and really good to know I'm alcoholic. I just want to emphasize that. The older I get, the more grateful I am to know I'm alcoholic. I have a solution for alcoholism as well because I lived a number of years in alcoholism, and I was convinced alcohol was my solution. So my name is David. I'm alcoholic, and I don't need a drink today. And this idea of God, I love this idea of God. I love this idea more than I love drink even. I just love the idea of God. I love being connected to God. I just love it. It's a beautiful thing. So let me just start. Elizabeth is going to be fantastic next week as well. Good to see Elizabeth here. She does wonderful stuff with newcomers meeting. She's been doing that since the beginning of Zoom as well. Wonderful stuff. Uh, so I just want to start with this, Howard. I'm going to when I was a young fella, my mother used to always say to me, David, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. Went over my head, didn't know what she was talking about. And I didn't understand. So I understand it now, of course, to mean that, I was trying to be a grown up before I was an adolescent. And basically what it was is I never done the basics of life. I never done the basics. I never learned patience. I never practiced patience. I never practiced tolerance. I never dealt with disappointment, sadness, anything like that. I just found alcohol and I took a drink and I love the drink. So before I go into the reading per se, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Why? Because I'm going to bring you back to the forward to Howard, the 12 by 12 before we go into the reading. So the basics are essential. I have the basics in life today because I've been through the steps. I've been through the steps with Joe and Charlie when the audios. I've been through the book with Howard Eber. I've been through the book, the basics text of many times, and it's essential for me to remember the basics, the importance of the basics. But Wilson said in 1954 in the foreword to, it's in the foreword to the 12 by 12, they said the book Alcoholics Anonymous became the basic text of the fellowship. And he said it still is. This present volume, the 12 by 12, proposes to broaden and deepen the understanding of the 12 steps as first written in the earlier work. Remember, in step 10, we started off by saying we've entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. So this is why this book helps me as well. So I have the basics and they both work together for me. I don't want to start with the 12 by 12 because if I did, I'd start becoming Philosopher Dave. That's what you be listening to. So this is about me getting an understanding. I'm alcoholic. I know I'm alcoholic and I could not control you, and I wanted to control the effect produced by alcohol. I didn't know I was alcoholic. And Wilson said in the foreword, he said, the basic principles of AA, as they are known today, were borrowed mainly from the fields of religion and medicine. Though some ideas upon which success finally depended were the result of noting the behavior and needs of the fellowship itself. And this is what he says in step 1, and I will get into where I'm going with this in one moment. This is what he said in step 1 of the 12 by 12, and I'm not going to read it more. He said, we know that little good, this is the experience after 20 years, let's say, let's round it up, 20 years of it, they know this experience until we know that little good can come to any alcoholic who joins AA. Notice he says joins AA, unless he has first accepted his devastating weakness and all its consequences. He said, until they humble themselves, their sobriety, if any, will be precarious. Of real happiness, they will find none at all. He said, this is proved beyond doubt by an immense experience. This is one of the facts of AA life, the principle that we shall find no enduring strength until we first admit complete defeat is the main taproot from which our whole society has sprung and flowered. And that is my life. My life is based on that step 1. It's based on that because if I have step 1, therefore I have step 2. I'm instantly thinking of God. I'm thinking of the idea of God. And if I have a God in my life, I'm trying to develop a relationship with God. How am I doing that? I'm continuing to take personal inventory. What does that mean? I'm doing the first 9 steps of the program. as we touched on already. So I'm doing an inventory of me. I'm good at doing other people's inventory. I've already done Rob's again. I've been good at doing other people's inventory. So I have to do my own inventory. And if I've wronged people, I try and admit that to myself straight away anyway. And then I kind of try and admit that to God, obviously. And then I try and acknowledge to the person where I'm wrong. So I'm just going to go to the reading now from the basic text. We're in the last paragraph on page, the second last paragraph on page 85, but it's the last paragraph of step 10. And this is what they said. And this is only 4 years in. So this is the basic stuff. This is 4 years in. What I read from is 20 years later, 15, 16 years later. So this is what he said at this time, hot off the press. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who is all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. Of course, you're going to hear about that next week, about step 11 next week. So I'm just going to, Howard, I have a couple of things I want to put up on the screen. So I'm going to share my screen with you for a second, and I want to start with this section just for you, and that's kind of straightforward. I've already said that one, so much has already been said. So I just want to bring this to your attention as well. So this is from a book I was very much involved with in the beginning of my recovery journey. Scott Peck, the Road Less Traveled. And he said in this book, and we can apply this to some extent, he said, if this book aids you in any way, he said, I hope most of all that it will assist you to think less simplistically. I hope you will abandon the urge to simplify everything, to look for formulas and easy answers. That's what I was doing when I was new in AA, looking for easy fixes, quick fixes. And he said, and begin to think multidimensional. Now, again, that took time. The glory in the mystery and the paradoxes of life. I like to think I'm in that today by doing this program. Not to be dismayed by the multitude of causes and consequences that are inherent in each experience, to appreciate the fact, and I have to be told this, life is complex. Life is difficult, guys. And I was trying to figure it all out sitting at the bar having a couple of drinks. You can't put an old head on young shoulders. And here I was trying to figure it all out. Bill Wilson, 20 years sober, warning against oversimplification. I spoke to Jim Worley about this, and I kind of got this kind of confirm where it's from. So he said, we can't, this is Bill Wilson, he said in 1954 in a talk about how the big book came about, he said, we can't keep it so simple, it becomes an anarchy and gets complicated. And in a letter in 1954, we're still looking for the confirmation of this letter, but this is basically the same thing. He said, God knows I believe in keeping AA simple, but you can make a thing too simple. So simple, in fact, that it soon gets complicated. Now, this is why I'm introducing that is because I need to get a better understanding of the basics. The basics are wonderful. I'm not knocking the basics are essential, but for me, I need to have a better understanding of that, a clearer understanding, and I get that by taking the spiritual life is not a theory. I've got that by taking actions, as I've touched upon already in the previous 9 steps. But also by reading stuff, going to meetings like Howard Eber's meeting, going to meetings like that, Elizabeth's meeting, newcomers meeting, talking with newcomers, listening to people, getting a better understanding of why it is I get sober. I'm not saying I'm right, but and other people are dying as we speak from alcoholism. I don't want to get complacent. I really and truthfully do not want to get complacent where I get blasé about AA, about my recovery, about my relationship with God. So I need to keep developing this spirit that the only thing I'd say, I don't believe the spirit flowed into me. I already believe the spirit was within me. That's my only thing with Bill on that one. But remember, he's writing 4 years in recovery. So I don't think it flew in from somewhere else. Jonas, this is what I'm just saying. I believe it was already within me. I just didn't acknowledge it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not, listen, it's six and one, half a dozen other. I'm just saying, for me to understand it, I could be wrong, but I'm just going with my understanding is, I believe that I'm of the spirit. The spirit was already in me. I cut myself off from the spirit by drinking alcohol. And the ego, if you want, the self-will wasn't in alignment with that spirit. So that was called, as I understand it, the spiritual malady. Now, that's Bill Wilson in 1954. Now, what we read from the 12 by 12 was 1953. Well, I've read that. So, and any practical journey, the one of recovery is at times intricate and requires a new, improved, deeper understanding. any journey. I was reading about Zen Buddhism today, and I like reading about that as well. And this is what they're talking about. You've got to keep the newcomer's mind. You have to try and keep the newcomer's mind. Everything is fresh. We read at the beginning of this meeting, God, help me keep an open mind for a new experience. I'm going to say I have that one. I love it. I love it. And I lovely listen to Dina introduce the meeting. It's great enthusiasm, and it's great to hear what's going on, what Howard has been doing here. I love just getting into that, you know. But my problem here might be I might want to control it. That's the only thing I have. I might want to control it. That's the only thing I will say on that. So that's that. And now 12 steps to 12. I read that as well. We know I had this guy lined up, but I just took another. Now here's back to the reading. Here back to the paragraph. So the spiritual life is not a theory, and I saying to myself when I was thinking about this, and what way am I going? So this without step one, this is all academic. And I thought it's essential to start with this because when I joined AA for the first time, I was skeptical and cynical, a very cynical guy, and of organizations, and I didn't know what was going on. But this really caught my attention in the doctor's opinion. I'm sure you've covered this with Howard. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. Now, I never liked the froth on the beer. Never keen with the froth. I always wanted to get into the good stuff, Howard. Right? I want to get into the good stuff. So frothy emotional appeal, even in recovery, just don't drink and go to meetings. It's not sufficient. It's good information, but it's not sufficient. He said the message, if you want, we just touched on directions, which can interest and hold these alcoholic people. Now, there's other alcoholic people that might be interested, but he's talking about these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. And I think in my case, I'm not saying I'm better than or worse than, I'm just saying for me, go to meetings and don't drink. My mother used to tell me that, and she's not alcoholic. She told me, David, don't take the first drink, you can't get drunk. I understand I'm not an idiot. I understand that. I didn't know that when I drank, I was drinking as an alcoholic who wanted to control and enjoy the effect produced by alcohol. Even today, I want to control life. I don't like being this thing about transitory. Everything is I want to be in control. I want perfection. That's me beneath all this. I have to accept that's not the way it is, David. Things fade and things die, and people you care about get sick, and I'm not good at accepting that. So I pray for that. And for me, prayer is thinking about God, which Elizabeth is going to obviously talk about more in detail next week. But that's where I'm leading into. I didn't have any that working relationship with God the first time I was going through this. I've already connected with the God within me, right? So having a balance in recovery is essential for me to maintain a fit spiritual condition. It's essential. So a balance between work and what I'm talking about here, because I'm in the spirit now. If I went out like this to work tomorrow, people would take a step back from me. I'm on fire. I'm a bit of a zealot when it comes to spirit. I love it. I'd be talking about the flowers and the cobwebs and the spiders and the wind blowing through and the sunshine. And I love talking the cracks in this. I love it. I'm mystical minded when it comes to all this stuff. But if I start talking to some people, they do take a step back, and I've learned. So I have to have a balance to know my audience, so to speak, to know what situation I'm in. Yeah, you're not gone. You're still there, right? Yeah. So that means I gotta retain a balance between the simplicity of life and the complexity of living life in the social interactions of the material realm. Now, the core message of it is that the change process from a life of escapism, obsession, to one of awareness and consciousness. Wilson said very clearly in his own story, he said it's simple but not easy. Now, which suggests that while the reading of the steps and principles of the program, the theory, are simple. It's a simple thing. I get an A+ for it. I know the theory. But the application of these concepts in real life are at times complex. And that depends on one's perspective. So we got to remember about being excessively hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. So this is why I'm trying to lead this into being God conscious. You see, when I'm not God conscious, my perspective of things changes. The glass becomes half full. The glass becomes instantly half full, and all of a sudden, I'm not thinking of any positivity. I'm thinking of the negativity. I'm thinking of all the troubles of the world. I'm trying to fix things I have no power over fixing. So I need to kind of keep that turned round. So that leads me into this section here. So they said there's the one about the Zen. In Zen, they teach that the goal of practice is always to keep our beginner's mind. So I've got to keep it as I'm not that I am a newcomer without experience. I'm a newcomer with a lot of experience of practicing a spiritual way of life. Now, the flow of his spirit, the sixth sense, I wanted to touch upon the sixth sense, what I understand he's talking to. And I'm not saying I'm right, but I understand what I think he's talking about. And I'm reading that as intuition. Now, if you remember when we were talking about in the step 9 promises, he talks about, you will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle you. Well, intuition for me is what the sixth sense is. That's how I understand it. Now, this is illustrated by my reaction that we talked about previously about how I will react to life. Am I in conscious contact? Am I connected? Is my conscious in contact with God? If it is, I will react in right proportion. My expectations are right sized. But if I'm not instinctively in conscious contact with God, I will overreact to any given situation. I won't be in the sixth sense, so I won't be using my intuition. Now, the word intuition is interesting. The word intuition, it comes from, if you think of the word itself, it's coming from this thing called intuition. Now, tuition is to educate. So you're getting educated from within. Now, this guards against, this is what we're talking about, spiritual education. This is a spiritual way of life. So intuition means for me, I'm educated. I wasn't like that young boy who said out when his mother was telling him, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. I wasn't tuned in. I wasn't God conscious at that time. I wasn't doing anything about tuition. I was getting a lot of information, academic information, knowing how to get what I wanted, manipulate situations. But now I have intuition, which I understand is principles. God is a principle. God is a principle. God is neither left nor right. God is neither up nor down. God is that which holds the two of them together, as I understand it. I don't know what I can't. I try to visualize that sometimes, and I kind of get the idea of it. But the idea of God is good enough to go on with. I like the idea of God. I'm God conscious. So he said we have begun. So he was saying in 1939, he was saying he has become he's developed. He's just begun to develop. That's what I mean about the basics. I remember when I was beginning on this journey. I'm not comparing myself to anyone else other than who I was in 1994 in November of 1994, when I kind of made that decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. So since then I've been growing in understanding and hopefully effectiveness, and that's what I'm trying to do. Keep this beginner's mind, to stay in the sixth sense, to stay God consciousness, to be connected to the flow of the Spirit. And the directions that I think Wilson's directions are wonderful. I think, I like his directions for an alcoholic. I think they're wonderful directions. He's really covered me as an alcoholic when he talks about the actor who wants to run the whole show. He's covered all that. He's talked about me as the guy who leads a double life. And he's talking about how I'm hiding a lot of my failings, not only from other people, but from myself. And I've now made restitution for all that. So I'm a new man. My roots have grasped new soil. I love it. I grasp the flimsy reed. Now I know these terms from going through the basics with people like Howard and people like that. I went through the basics, so I have the basics of it. I understand that the flimsy reed is. I just love the idea of how grasping out at something so flimsy as a reed. And here we are. It's the hand. It's a strong hand now. It's a very firm hand, and I desperately put my hand out and I grabbed it. And what a blessed thing it has been. I'm glad I did that. Glad it's not even touching it really. So now this is what guy I like reading as well. Now to go into the next stage of this. His name is Rupert Spira, and he's based in London here. And I've seen him a couple of times in London. I spoke to him. It was nice to speak to him as well, because I read some of his stuff. This is from a book titled Being Aware of Being Aware. Now, I started with a book called Awareness by Anthony DeMello as well when I was new. I was reading these as part of my step 11. I was getting a better understanding, and that's what I was doing. I was trying to understand what Wilson had helped me get the spiritual awakening, but now I needed to grow. He said, be quick to see where other people are right. Okay, he says that, be quick. So I wanted to get other people's perspective on things, But primarily, I'm coming from you tonight as I'm alcoholic. That's what I'm coming to you. I'm not speaking as a non-alcoholic. I'm speaking to you as an alcoholic who needs to do step one, who needs to do step two, and needs to do the program. Now, he says thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions have changed innumerable times throughout our lives and just throughout my time in recovery. But he said, the knowing which they are known, the simple experience of being aware, has remained the same throughout. So therefore, my understanding is changing, but the sense of it is still the same. The sense of what it is, you know, I think I touched upon it before when I was stealing something as a young kid. I knew that was wrong. I didn't, but I tried to justify my actions. I put it back tomorrow. So it's not that I didn't know these things. I just wasn't practicing the spiritual principles. So becoming aware of that, so being conscious of that is very important for me. Now I'm in sync. I'm in alignment with what's inside of me, with the flow of the spirit, if you want. And I'm now aware that that's already inbuilt in me. Now I'm trying to align my thinking. The ego is. Now I say all this, but there's a version of me. There's a version of me doesn't want to do this. You understand this? There's a version of me does not want to turn its will and its life over to the care of God. But I'm doing it because I have step one. This is essential for me to kind of get across to a newcomer when I'm talking to him. I don't go sometimes into this detail with them. I try and explain to him if he's a real alcoholic. Now I'm going to do a talk soon on it's a workshop actually on the real alcoholic. That's the title of it. But what about the real alcoholic? And that's what I'm going to be talking about. What about the real alcoholic? The real alcoholic, as I understand it, is someone who's got the physical allergy and the mental obsession. And there's many different degrees to that. You have younger people coming into there. They could be still a real alcoholic, but they haven't got suffer the consequences that maybe some other people, and they don't have to suffer the consequences, but they could be still a real alcoholic. But the problem is they're not going to grasp the flimsy reed. They're not desperate enough to grasp the flimsy reed. So people are all different. The spectrum of alcohol, people are at all different stages. But I think the basics are always the same, regardless of what part of the illness you come in at. If you can surrender, or I need to surrender 100%. Like I started out reading, they recognize that unless people can, now they said those who joined AA, remember that's what they said. Joining AA and going to AA are completely different perceptions. I've seen a lot of people going to AA, but joining AA and being a member of AA, just because I have a desire, that only gets me in the door. I can sit there, yeah, I have a desire to stop drinking. But to be a member of AA, to join it, that's a big step. That's a bit of a shift in perspective there for me. I go to AA, yeah, listen to the people do all the service. Yeah, thanks very much, guys. Like going to the supermarket and getting all the food. Right? I'm just going to that. I'm just getting stuff. So I go to AA and I get stuff. But when I join AA, am I being of service? And these are things I ask myself. And I don't beat myself up about it, but I've always done service in AA. And I think I said before, and if I haven't, I should have said it, that going to AA and not doing service would be like going to the pub and not drinking alcohol. Right? I want to be, when I go to the pub, I want to drink, I want to drink the spirit. I want to be in the spirit of alcohol. When I go to AA, I want to be in the spirit of AA. I want to be so consumed by the spirit of AA. And what really helps me get a better understanding of like listening to these history talks, Schaberg's book, writing the big book, The Creation of AA. I see Gary Neihard is here. Gary wrote a wonderful book on Bobby B. Wonderful insight into people who were in the beginning done so much great work in carrying the message to alcoholics. And he wrote another book on King Charles of New York City. Charlie Towns, Charles Towns. I shouldn't say Charlie. He didn't like to be called Charlie. Thank you, Gary. So these is what helped me appreciate AA so much. So much. What an organization. And that was my sense when I was that guy really new for the first time. I got a sense when I heard a preamble being read. Howard read it tonight. Now, Allied Running Sect, Denomination, Politics, Organization. I loved that idea, that kind of being to step into that world it's a blessed. I got it. I got it. The hairs on the back of my neck used to just. Oh, I used to get it. I used to get the sense of it. And of course, some days I go to AA now and I get disappointed because it's not. I'm not getting that boom. But then I have to turn it over and have to see what I can bring to the table. So all this is essential for me getting back to the reading what he says here about these directions and sensing the flow of his spirit into me. He said, to some extent, you have become God conscious. But he must go further. And I just want to, I know Elizabeth is going to be covering this next week. So, Elizabeth, I'm not going to steal a little bit of your tongue. But I just wanted to kind of close a little bit on leading into step 11, because that's all about improving conscious contact. The whole purpose of that is seeking through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. So, this is this, unless I'm growing in understanding, I'm not really going to, unless I become God conscious, I ain't going to be able to improve conscious contact with God. I can't become God conscious. If I'm not God conscious, I can't improve God conscious, is what I'm trying to say. And all that new documentary came out with Jay Stinnett has not written, but they made a new documentary about Bill Wilson in his latter years of his life, about how he sought other forms of meditation, transcendental meditation. And Wilson was doing all sorts of stuff. We know about his trials and tribulations with LSD and stuff like that. But he was still trying to improve his understanding and get a better understanding of what it means to be a human being. What it means to be a human being who's conscious and being awake. And it's scary, but it's wonderful. It's scary and it's wonderful. I need to have the balance between those two things. If I'm like we were talking about in the beginning of the meeting, if I'm in the day, if I'm in the now, and I mean my thinking, because I can't be anywhere else other than now. There's no other time other than now. But my thinking is not always in alignment. I'm thinking about work, I'm thinking about relationships. Rob tells me about when he watches these hockey games and he's full of anxiety. I watch soccer games, I get full of anxiety because the team, I'm trying to get ahead, I'm trying to watch what's happening. And that brings, I can see how sometimes when I'm watching a soccer match on TV, I have to pause it. My anxiety level gets so acute. Like seriously, my anxiety gets so acute because I'm not in control of what's happening. Because this thing is out of my control, so I have to sit there and watch this thing happening. But when I'm doing life, I think that's when I'm doing life on life's terms. I'm trying to kind of stay within my zone. I don't kind of go into other people's zones, other people's business. I try not to get involved in other people's businesses. But sometimes, it's difficult. Sometimes I do. And that's where step 10 comes into it for me. And I recognize, and that's where the experience comes into it, that I'm not a newcomer in that sense, that I have the practical experience. I remember when I was going to do a degree back in 2008 in London University. It's done. I've done it. I've done 4 years of it, done. But it wasn't easy. But it's not something I'm going to do. It's something I've done. So I have the experience of doing things. And pro all that, I kept my primary purpose. I've had people sitting next to me in the chair here next to me, and very fluent people, but they can't get AA number one. Now, they mightn't have to put AA number one. I'm not saying they do. Good luck to you if you don't. I'm not saying I'm one of those people, whatever that means. I need to have a primary purpose. It needs to be, and if you ever see me drunk, by the way, that means AA became secondary. Trust me. If you ever see me drunk, it won't be because the AA failed. It's because I stopped doing what I'm doing now. And I'm not saying I'm beyond all that. I'm not beyond all that. That could happen. So I'm gonna finish then with it's just something on step 11. I won't go too far into it, but I have 2 or 3 minutes. So if you stick with me for that, you stuck with me so long. Here we go. And thank you for the opportunity, Howard, to do this. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. It's great to see you and Cathy together. I remember the two of you were dating on Zoom. It was wonderful to see you and then you got married. It was amazing. That's an amazing story, isn't it? It's one of those amazing stories. It's one of those good stories you hear about, I like good stories. So I'm not going to read all this. I'm going to just read a little section of it. So this is just from the Psalm. Again, it's from Emmett Fox, Power Through Constructive Thinking. He helps me understand God, as I understand him, a lot. And he said, I will say of the Lord, or they say, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him will I trust. Now that's the 91st Psalm. And then he said, the Lord means God, in particular, your own knowledge of truth. It's not a wonderful way of calling it, your own knowledge of truth. Your own knowledge of truth. That's a beautiful way of saying God is understanding, isn't it? As the knowledge is in itself the presence of God in the one who knows it, the indwelling Christ. Now, I'll just bring your attention to the end here. Secular, or the middle bit. Secular knowledge, which is intellectual. Remember we were talking last week about the 4 horses. This is the black horse. This is the black horse, which is intellectual, right? That's the intellectual guy. So remember that now. Secularism is, as we understand it here now, secular. If there's any seculars here, I'd stay behind and we're gonna have a chat after. Cannot, but secular knowledge, which is intellectual, cannot. But the true knowledge of God is not an intellectual theory. There's something missing from that, but the true knowledge of God is not an intellectual theory. It is an actual experience, not a thing in the head, but of the heart. And this is indeed a presence. Now that's what I've been trying to talk about. The flow of God, whatever that is, whatever we want to call that. I sense there's something other than this. And to finally, Howard, I'll probably take another 20 seconds. He said that then if you pray regularly in a scientific way, and that is rising in consciousness and treatment. Now, the steps are a way of rising me into a higher state of consciousness. That's the whole purpose of the steps, is to elevate my consciousness. And so basically, for next week, to lead you into that, prayer is essentially thinking about God. It's not necessarily addressing God. It's just thinking about God. And just scientific prayer is treatment. I went to a treatment center and they elevated my consciousness, and the 12 steps elevate me into a higher state of consciousness. And hopefully I've elevated your consciousness somewhat tonight, a little bit. Thank you, Howard Eba.
Thank you, David. Let me unmute everybody and let them loose. There we go.
Thank you, David.
Thank you,
Thank
David.
you.
Thank
That was awesome.
you.
Good job.
Thank you,
Thank you,
David.
brother.
Great.
Thank
Thank you,
Thank
David.
Thank
you.
you, David.
Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
David, that last part that you, let me mute everybody again, that you read reminds me, we were at last night's big book study, we were talking about the definition of prayer and the definition of meditation. And let me get this timer off here. Excuse me. Okay. And one of the things we talked about was prayer was defined as the conscious dwelling upon the being of God. And that's very much what you had just explained, is that conscious dwelling on that. It's just fascinating, fascinating. David, it's been great. Certainly Kathy and I will have you back in again, and it's not going to take 4 or 5 years to do that. We'll get you in here. It's great seeing you again. We're going to open it up to the floor. Dell will take over for the timing, 3 minutes if we can. We'll go by a show of hands, and then in a few minutes, we're going to ask David to reread that paragraph. So for the moment, let's see. Dina, you had your hand up first. Go right ahead.
Hey everybody, I'm Dina T, alcoholic again. Thank you so much, David, for your lead and all the God stuff. Sometimes I just have to, sometimes if I get all kind of caught up in stuff, I just have to say to myself, just shut up and go to work. And and then I go to work and I see always something, my pigeons on the cable, lining myself up for God's will, seeing stuff like that helps me. And there's there's only one person I think right now in the world that can push my buttons enough to where I really have to say, God, I've got to go to sleep. I just getting that closeness to God, because I know I cannot solve what I'm going through at the moment, is a new part for me about God is everything or he is nothing. What was your choice to be right now in this moment, And I loved your lead and I've learned so much, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Dina. Samantha, come on down.
Hi, everybody. Samantha, alcoholic, losing my voice. Hey, David, it's
great to see you here. I'm not sure what I want to say, except I was I was enjoying your presentation so much. I felt your enthusiasm. I was enthusiastic. So much passion. I'm not sure what part of the book you unpacked, but I felt like you totally unpacked David Kay. We really got to know you. But yeah, the step 10, I have to have that awareness, that watching, observing, being conscious of what I'm doing in my life to stay growing along spiritual lines. That's my point. And if I'm not walking my life through these steps, I can lose that consciousness and I can start being into things, people, places, and things. And so I have to be aware of what's my part, what am I doing, that I can keep my channel open and flowing to have that conscious contact with God, because that's, as you were saying, that's the key. And I mean, it's the arch through which we walk to freedom. All these steps that are bringing us further and closer and more in alignment and conscious contact with a higher power. Lack of power was definitely my dilemma when I got here, and lack of power is still my dilemma, except it's not a dilemma when I realize that God is the one with all power, and I just have to plug into that source. So it's always good to be here. I'm so grateful to be sober in AA. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Samantha. Del, we're going to go down to 2 minutes. We've got a lot of hands. Audra, come on down.
Thanks, Howard. Um, David, wow, just so you know, this month has been amazing, and I feel like I've met like another best friend. The way you just have such a great knowledge. Um, I As 22 days ago, I think it was August 3rd, I think is what my new sobriety date is. I had 10 years and went back out for 6 years of painful um hamster wheel, in, out, happen, thought I joined, this foot in, that foot out, and I just the way you've explained just these last couple of paragraphs, it's been spiritual experience during the week after spiritual experience, little aha moments all week long, and I just am so grateful. I got to hear this last week for you. I know came on earlier. I was kind of joking about, yeah, I had one this morning. I'm so blessed because I got to be baptized yesterday, and it's just been such a blessing in my spiritual growth these last 22 days of how things have moved and shifted, and I'm so glad. And I finally once again started my step 4, and it was just as simple as as God saying to me, Audra, just sit down, put pen to paper. It doesn't matter how you do it. It'll be okay. And as long as I stay in that spiritual realm, it'll be okay. So David, thank you again. Thank you everybody else who does service, and looking forward to see the next person next month. So thanks. I'll leave it there. Love you guys.
Thank you. Before we jump ahead to Gary, David, would you mind rereading that paragraph for us?
Thank you, Howard. Yes, so we're on page 85, the last paragraph of chapter, should I say, of step 10. He said, much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from him who is all knowledge and power. He said, if we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us. He says, to some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, he said, and that means more action.
Thank you, David. Gary, how are you, my friend?
Good. Thank you, Howard. Sixth Sense. It just reminded me of a Scott Redmond story about when he was a newcomer, and he was complaining about the fact that he was bored who was bored with AA, and his sponsor responded to him, "You're bored because you're boring." That really made a huge impression on him. So he waited a number of years until he could finally use that line on somebody else. And he had a pretty girl to his left, and they were after an AA meeting. She says, "You know, I'm bored." And he was ready to come back and say, he said to her, "You know why you're bored?" And she says, "Yes, because I'm with you." You know, but that sixth sense, it takes action. And that's just the thing. Stop and think about me as a newcomer. I was boring. And the fact of the matter is, it was all about how I thought. But that sixth sense turns around and changes over time. And it comes back to how I feel. That head knowledge is useless. The heart knowledge is wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Elizabeth?
Hi, Elizabeth, alcoholic. Really looking forward to doing this next week with you guys. Thanks, David. It was awesome to see what you brought to it. I'm a big fan of Emmett Fox as well. I'm laughing at this paragraph because, dude, I was a closed channel for a really long time and I had no idea at all. I had no idea. This whole, if we followed directions carefully, I didn't follow directions carefully. I didn't even read the sentence correctly. And sense the flow of his spirit into us. But, one thing I talk about a lot is, you could make a case for me being in the second half of step 1 for like 30 years. I'm serious, because I just managed. And I didn't even know that I was missing anything. I literally didn't know. My ego wouldn't tell me, it hid it from me. I don't know if you guys had something I didn't have, or if I missed something. The question never came up, right? And I've gotten into studying Harry Tiebout too. So I know that the ego is just, covering this all up for me. But since I've learned more and got exposed to messages of recovery online in the past 5 years, thank God, and gone to Emmett Fox studies and Tiebout studies and all that, the addition by subtraction was my first experience. It's like, get Elizabeth out of the way and something starts to happen. And it did, and I hit that wall enough times that I stopped coming up with my own answers, and I got put into positions where I didn't have answers. And then I started to have an experience that was unlike anything I had before. So I look at this paragraph now and I know what this means. And it's an amazing thing. And if you're not experiencing that, I'll share my number. You guys can call me. We can talk about it. I can help you see what I got to see in the last 5 years. Thanks.
Thank you. Looking forward to next week. Hunt, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Really looking forward to next week. David, I just have a question. It's 2 questions. I would just like to know the name of being aware. Rupert, the last name.
Spira, Spira.
All right, lovely. And then the last question is prayer. It was on the thing you put up. Prayer is essentially thinking about God, and the rest of the
Yes.
sentence.
Prayer is thinking about God. God, you got me on that one, Caddy.
Oh, I can get it at the end. It's all right.
No, I'm fine for Caddy. There you go. I'm very diligent when it comes to such things, aren't I, Howard? Not necessarily addressing God, addressing, not undressing.
Prayer is essentially thinking about God, not addressing God. All
Yeah,
right.
as in, I guess I get, what does that mean to me then? Thinking about God, not kind of speaking to him on a one-to-one in the sense, God, you must do this, and like Wilson calls it, like Santa Claus or something, like get me this and get me that, God, and I'll do this and you do that. That's what I try and understand it as.
Yeah.
Yeah, God's not our errand boy.
Aaron by Howard, that's the one.
That's it.
I love that, because just if my mind gets focused to thinking of the spirit or thinking of God, everything inside of me changes. Even just before I open, like we talked about before addressing, before talking to God, just focusing, turning my tuner, everything changes inside of me. So the fact of just thinking. Anyway, that is enough out of me. We're so going to miss you, David. We hope to have you back again soon if you'll come back. And thank you for this month.
See why I love her so much? Let's see, Gina.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about one of the flyers. It was about the traditions meeting on Sunday, but the date was yesterday. So is it going to be repeated Is this an ongoing thing? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'll take a look at it. Andy, you know which one we're talking about?
It was a flyer that you posted for the AA Online 12 Traditions Workshop with Q&A. It's posted for Sunday, August 24th from 3 to 5. And is it going to be repeated next Sunday, or has that come and gone?
It might have been shared by mistake. It's this one.
That
Yeah.
Gary B.
The one, yeah, this is,
That was yesterday.
yeah, this was yesterday. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, no, but it looks fascinating. I'm sorry I missed it. Is it something that will be repeated?
I don't know. I'll find out. If it is repeated, you'll see the announcement here.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll check with the person who gave it to me.
Sure.
You want to drop me a line? My email address is here, and I'll see if I can get you an answer.
Or
Okay, thank you. And David, I just want to say thank you for all of this. You're just really amazing.
we could try and get you the person that facilitates that group that
Okay.
facilitated their number. So if you put your number in the chat or send an email, we'll try and get your number.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Try and hook you up with them. And Jessica,